My guest is here. Excellent. Excellent. Because I didn't want to run that on my own for 45 minutes. My man, Dimitri Lascaris. How you doing, Dimitri? You doing all right?
I am so sorry for being late, Jamal. I'm
You're
on
fine.
a journalistic venture right now, so that's I was delayed. My
You're
apologies.
perfectly fine. No, you're perfectly fine. I'm just glad that you're here. I would have had to do a lot of dancing for 50 minutes.
I'm
But I
sure
didn't want to do
I'm
it.
sure you had a lot of good things to say, but
I had a
anyways,
good 10 minutes of things to say. But then it's like after that, it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? Yeah, man, like people don't get it. Like when you're doing your show, like, have you ever watched? And this is not what I want you on to talk about. In fact, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf and I'm trying to write down questions in advance. Usually I have an idea in my head where I want to shoot for, but I'm trying to change and alter the show on some level. But this is not that. Have you ever watched Larry? I think it was Lawrence O'Donnell, where he was doing the show. He heard knocking in his ears and he starts screaming, stop the knocking. And he's like flipping out and he's like yelling at the people. He's like, I'll come down and stop the knocking myself. He's like losing his mind. And people would look at that clip and it was like, God, man, why is he acting like that? When you're doing a show, your focus is very narrow. And anything that interrupts that focus screws with you and leads to frustration. I've been in my house doing a show with my ex-wife where she's upset, making a lot of noise, and you're sitting there like, "Will you shut up? Will you shut the f up?" Now, usually
yeah,
you wouldn't act that way, right? But it's like I'm doing my job. You know, you're interrupting my job, or you're interceding my job. I don't
it's
mind
it's
the phrase.
also it's also problematic for the viewers. They get distracted too, so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't help anybody. I've
yeah.
had the
And there
same
have been
problem, Jamal. Drives me crazy, man.
there have
I
been
go
times where
nuts.
I've had to dance for an hour. Sometimes you come up with good stuff because you get into a stream of thought where you're like, yeah, this is gold. I can do this. And there are other times where you're like, I got nothing. One day on the radio, I had there was one guest canceled first thing in the morning. So the entire hour I had to do it alone. One guest came in at the 8 o'clock hour. Then the next guest canceled at 9 o'clock. And so they were like back to back to back cancellations where you're trying to do the entire show. And I remember on the show, I was like, God damn. Like this is outrageous. Like you out it to the audience because it's a weird situation. Dimitri, I'm
Yeah,
glad
and
you're
by the way, it was almost a total disaster for you, brother, because I only realized that I was late for your program because I happened to look at my email, and the reason why is because I'm driving down the southern coast of Cyprus today,
are you?
doing I'm doing a report right now. I'm some fishing village I've never been in before, and I
Yep.
happened to check my email and I saw the StreamYard link and I went, "Oh my God! I forgot that I was supposed to be speaking to Jamal at 3 p.m. Local time today." So thank God I checked my email, man.
God
It
got
would have been a
involved.
total disaster.
God got involved. Um, Dimitri Lascaris, he is lawyer, journalist, um, intrepid reporter, obviously, since you're doing that right now. Activist from Montreal, Quebec. In 2020, Dimitri ran for the leadership of the Green Party in Canada, and he hosts Reason to Resist. Reason to Resist. Um, Dimitri, I want to show you something. I was very angry at this clip. And so I can imagine your take on this clip where, and I'll just play it because I'm trying to shut up and give the speaker more time. This is Envoy to Lebanon, Tom Barrack. Listen to what he says here when he's talking to the reporters. And again, I want you to keep in context why he's there. They are destabilizing Lebanon in this moment when you have Wahhabists that backed by the U.S., Israel backed by the U.S., all of which pecking at Lebanon simultaneously. Tom Barrack, responsible for it, and backs the genocide that's taking place next door. Listen to what he says.
All right. Please. Okay, if everyone could take their seats, we're gonna.
Not going up. No, no, no. Oregon, wait. Let's have one rule, okay? You just had three of the most.
Hello.
Okay, wait. this we're going to have a different set of rules, right? You want, please be quiet for a moment. And I want to tell you something. The moment that this starts becoming chaotic, like animalistic, we're gone. So you want to know what's happening, act civilized, act kind, act tolerant, because this is the problem with what's happening in the region. So I beg you, do you think this is fun for us? Do you think this is economically beneficial for Morgan and I to be here putting up with this insanity? In cadence, with your kindness, your interest, and your thoughtful questions, we'll give you responses. If that's not how you'd like to operate, we're gone. Okay? Is that acceptable to everybody? Now, what are we doing?
What an outrageous clip. That is outrageous. Give me your take, Dimitri.
Man, I don't even know where to begin, Jamal. I mean, first of all, I didn't see anything in that clip from the press corps that you don't see in scrums, as we call them in Canada,
Yep.
all the time, especially when, there are hotly disputed important issues being discussed by the press and some political representative. There was nothing unusual about that at all. Nothing. Secondly, he's like, we're not profiting from this. Is Tom Barrack serving in that capacity for free? I don't think so. My guess is that he's being paid handsomely by the U.S. government to do what he's doing. So for him to be suggesting that he's he's answering the questions from the media out of the kindness of his heart, and this is an act of charity, it's total, just complete and utter BS. But the most offensive thing about this of all, Jamal, and you've pointed to it already, is this man represents a regime, the Trump regime, that is participating in a genocide just a few hundred kilometers away from where this piece of garbage gave this press conference, okay, in Gaza and in the West Bank. Plus, if he just drives down the road, as I have done 5 times in the last 2 years, to southern Lebanon, he will see an entire series of communities that have been leveled to the ground, completely flattened by Israel using American munitions. So for this piece of trash to be lecturing the indigenous peoples of the region about civility, oh my God, what is worse in civility? Is it destroying somebody's home, flattening their communities, or is it raising your voice when you want to be heard because you have an important question to ask some political representative? I mean, this man is deranged, frankly. And as I said on X, after seeing this disgraceful episode, the man should be actually in jail. He should be frog marched off to the Hague and prosecuted for complicity in a genocide and in the war crimes of Israel in the south of Lebanon and in Beirut. That's where he should be. He has no business lecturing anybody about civility.
Agreed. And then to make this argument, that is the problem with the region. No, you're the problem with the region, Tom. You. The regime that you effectively back is the problem with the region. He's like, yeah, you guys are acting animalistic. Why are they acting, quote unquote, animalistic? Because they, as rational human beings, recognize what the U.S. is effectively trying to do. They're trying to create all sorts of political chaos in the government by pushing that government to accept a disarmament of Hezbollah, something that is not going to happen. And he's like, why are you guys acting this way? What's your issue? You're bombing, you're backing, you're giving this maniac government weapons. I showed this before you got here. Take a look at this. This is what Lebanon, and you've been to Lebanon plenty of times. This is what they're going through on a daily basis. And it's like, I don't understand why you guys are so animated about trying to ask me questions. Tom Baxter. And we should
if Barrack had been there, I'm sure he would have chastised those children for behaving in an animalistic manner.
Yeah,
that's what he
why
was
are you guys freaking out? Why don't you be calm? Just sit down and chill out. And
lower your voices, man.
a rational
Yeah.
conversation. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. That's what they're living through on a daily basis. What are those kids thinking in that moment? They don't understand the larger geopolitical consequences or the context of what's taking place. What they see is we nearly died today. We nearly died, all of us. And if they would have died, nobody would have said a word short of their family and relatives. And Tom would have still sat there unimpressed, not given an S, just, you guys need to chill out. If you want to ask me questions, we need to talk rationally. Tom is backing that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Does he get that?
Jamal, he kind of did us as in those of us who want to see an end to U.S. hegemony and the domination of this region. He kind of did us a favor, because he tore the mask off even further. He showed in the most offensive, obvious, unabashed manner the degree to which the people who speak on our behalf are depraved monsters and outright racists. And I think he isn't going to change people's attitudes in a way that will advance the agenda of the Trump administration. He basically has undermined the agenda of the Trump administration by, behaving in this outrageously racist manner. So, as I say, in a way, he did the resistance a favor.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like to know my monsters. I don't want them to wear masks. So I appreciate honesty when I get it from their take of the world. That take tells you everything about them. It tells you nothing about the thing that they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's just, that is just a mind-blowing clip.
Yeah,
Like
I'm more concerned about a smooth talker, like somebody who comes in and comes across as being truly compassionate towards the local population, the indigenous peoples of the region, while at the same time fomenting, aiding, and abetting a genocide. That person's more dangerous. This clown, he has ignited a firestorm of controversy in Lebanon and beyond. And ultimately, that is going to create a problem for the Trump administration, and it all has plenty of problems in that region.
Is it though? Right now, you would think that trying to implement policy to disarm Hezbollah would create all sorts of chaos, since most of the local population, even if they disagree with Hezbollah, still want them armed because they understand it. Because the argument that the government is making is, we got guarantees that if Hezbollah disarms and Israel attacks us, then we can go to the UN Security Council and they will do something about the fact that Israel attacks us. How stupid can you be? And I don't believe for a moment that a country that has been bombed during a ceasefire is going to accept that nonsense. And yet, that's what the president is pushing, or the prime minister.
Yeah. Well, he's going to have a harder time making his case now, I can assure you. Even people who might be hostile to Hezbollah are going to look at this and say, you're calling our journalists animals for behaving in ways that are no different from your own? Are you kidding me? And frankly, in my experience with journalists in Lebanon, they are much more committed to the truth than those in the Western corporate media. They were truly brave. As one of our mutual friends, for example, Laith Marouf, every time he goes to South Lebanon, he's risking his life. How many Western corporate journalists are doing that while at the same time casting aspersions on people of the region in West Asia? So I think he's really done a disservice to the Trump administration, which is a good thing. This is revealed or just added to the mountain of evidence about who these people really are. And by the way, I think that when it comes to disarming Hezbollah, it's my understanding that either today or tomorrow there's going to be, Hezbollah has called for a protest, for its supporters to come out and express their views about this demand that Hezbollah disarm. And Amal, the ally of Hezbollah, is also calling for that protest. So it'll be interesting to see how many people come out. But in this context, I just want to mention, Jamal, a poll that was done in May in Palestine. It wasn't Lebanon, but it was Palestine, because, of course, we've been hearing over and over again from Western governments and also from the Arab autocracies that are supported by Western governments that Hamas has to disarm.
Right.
And Palestinians living in the occupied territories were asked, what do you think about the demand that Hamas disarm? And something in the range of 80% were opposed. And Hamas does not enjoy that level of support amongst the population, not even close at this stage. I think it's a slight majority that supports Hamas across both occupied territories. But the percentage that thought that Hamas should not disarm was an overwhelming majority, because the people living every day with these monstrosities understand that their best protection is armed resistance. No one else is going to help them. No one else. So even people who are not necessarily aligned ideologically with the resistance groups are hotly opposed, many of them, to the issue of disarmament.
You make a damn good point. I mean, because what they know in their heart of hearts is that even if Hezbollah disarms, none of this changes. None of it
Exactly.
changes. And so it's like, okay, do we disarm and they still do this? Or do we have armed resistance and they still do this? Okay, between those two things, which do you prefer? It's not a love necessarily for Hezbollah. I mean, for Hamas, maybe they do, maybe they don't. It's just a logical thing. And to make this point clear, so I'm pretty sure you saw the video where they bombed the hospital and murdered those emergency workers. Right here, just for reference for the audience, just in case the audience didn't see it. I did play this a little bit earlier, but I'll play it again just for context. Israel bombed the hospital. After they bombed the hospital, emergency workers go to try to give support, and they double tap, murdering the emergency workers.
لهذا الزميل الصحفي حسام المصري.
لا حصل الآن
نعم.
خليك يا الله راح الدفاع المدني.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this killed like 20 people, with 5 of which being journalists.
Yes.
Netanyahu, it was so bad, and it got so much publicity, probably because it was a Reuters journalist that died also. And just to show another point, you pointed this out on your channel about the number of journalists that have been killed in the world. I think it was like 71% of all the journalists that have been killed around the world have been in Palestine. 70% of journalists killed.
Since October 7th, 2023. That's correct.
Yep. That number is astonishing, which means that Israel is trying to hide the reality of what is taking place. They're in a war with reality itself. The people afterwards, after that took place, Netanyahu came out and says, hey, that was a mistake, which is amazing, right? You've been committing a genocide of starving like 2 million people for the entire time, but this one is particularly a mistake. The military gets angry, goes on to the news network and say it wasn't a mistake. We killed those people intentionally, and we're angry that you're saying that this was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
What does one say? On the one hand, they're right to be angry, because if they were ordered to do this, and they almost certainly were, the higher ups are the buck stops with them. I mean, that doesn't alleviate them of responsibility. Okay, anybody who was involved in that double tap war crime, and there have been many by Israel, should be held accountable and spend the rest of his disgusting, putrid life, or hers, in a jail cell at The Hague. But the ones who are primarily responsible are the ones who gave the order at the top of the food chain. And so in that sense, they are correct to be angry. But I come back to this basic fundamental point, man. Somebody tells you, fire that missile at those journalists, fire that missile at the rescue workers who show up to save them if they can. You are accountable as well. You don't get a free pass just because, and it's very clear in international law, as a matter of international law and basic human morality. None of those soldiers, even if they were given an order, and even if denying that order or disobeying that order would subject them to imprisonment, they had a legal and moral obligation to say, no, I will not do it. And they didn't. So they too should hang.
This is Witkoff. Let's be very clear. Hamas has been willing to accept deal after deal after deal. Israel has changed one deal after the next in order to make sure that no one accepts a deal, because they want to effectively either exterminate the population or ethnically cleanse the population. They don't want a deal. That's the dirty truth. This was something that even came out from people working with Joe Biden, where they admitted that over and over again, Israel was effectively putting the kibosh on the deal. Witkoff, who apparently had some kind of agreement, is now saying that agreement is off, and Trump is aligning himself with Netanyahu. I'm going to play the clip. This is him on Fox News.
We'll have a negotiation if they want as to what next day it looks like in Gaza after this is all done, and what the definition of Hamas is. We can talk about those things, but we adamantly want, and I'm following the president's direction here when I say this, all of those hostages home.
This week, obviously, we had Israel killing journalists and rescue workers when this hospital was targeted. There were Hamas leaders there.
That's amazing what he just said. Like, this is U.S. media, right? Like, this is the issue. Out of the blue, it's clear that they were Hamas there. How the F does he know? How does he know? Who's telling him that?
Mm-hmm.
Where is he getting that information from? Brett Baer, asshole Brett Baer, who failed at his job right there. Obviously, since they murdered all of these journalists and all of those emergency workers, they were clearly Hamas there. What? And just slides it in as he's asking Wyckoff questions.
Yeah. Well, the good news is this piece of trash is becoming increasingly isolated, Jamal, because I'll give you a couple of examples. I think it was a few days after the Israelis murdered Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera journalist who's a Pulitzer Prize winner a few weeks ago. The New York Times, the fanatically pro-Israel New York Times, published an op-ed in which the writer explicitly accused Israel of assassinating a journalist. And then today, I subscribe to the Washington Post alerts just to keep apprised of what they're doing. And they put out an alert today in which they not only enumerated all the journalists, the total number of journalists that have been killed by Israel, and strongly intimated that this is an intentional project. But they also highlighted commentary from Israeli media personalities who were praising the double tap strike on Nasser Hospital. This is the Washington Post. So these scumbags at Fox News who are like just spewing this crap about, there being Hamas people there are becoming very isolated, and soon they're even going to have to abandon Israel, in my opinion. Sooner or later they will. But whether or not they do, the fact of the matter is, even if there were Hamas personnel present at the hospital, I keep coming back to this stuff. I get sometimes chastised by people on my program because I talk about international law, and they say to me, "Oh, what does it matter? Nobody gives a damn about international law anymore," and so forth. I understand where they're coming from, but it actually does matter. It does matter. People do care about whether things are legal or illegal. Not all people, but a lot of people continue to care. And if we just abandon international law altogether and we say it doesn't matter, if we buy into the thinking of the elites, we're finished. We will be consumed by the law of the jungle. So it is illegal to do what they did, even if there were Hamas officials present at the hospital. And also, I should add, the claim that Anas al-Sharif was Hamas, that doesn't entitle them to kill Hamas al-Sharif. There's no evidence that he was, by the way. There's zero evidence that he was. The Pulitzer Prize winning journalist that they mercilessly massacred along with other Al Jazeera staff. But he's not a combatant. You can't kill somebody just because they're a member of a movement you don't like. He's not a combatant. There's no evidence he was a combatant. So again, Hamas has become this magic word in the minds of these sick lunatics that excuses every crime, every depravity. But as a matter of international law, even if what they're saying is true, and it isn't, it does not justify what they did. And also as a matter of basic morality, it does not justify what they did. So let's suppose there were Hamas officials present. You're telling me just as a matter of basic morality, you believe that they should have been entitled to massacre these journalists and also to massacre the rescue workers because there were some Hamas officials? I mean, what kind of a sick person thinks this way? So
American
they're yeah,
that's what it is. It's Western exceptionalism. They believe that they're superior, that they're better, that when they do stuff, it's okay. I give an example. If Hamas blew up an apartment building in order to get one Israeli general and killed 100 people to do it, under their logic, that's acceptable. Nobody else's logic thinks that that's okay. Under their logic, because this is the logic that Brett Baer is going with. This is the logic that the U.S. goes with. When they blew up that Houthi, I think it was apartment or something like that, and killed all of those people, there's like, well, we're trying to get one guy. Or they blew up the Jabalia camp, killing 60, 70 people. There were 2 people there that we believe that we needed to kill. And it's like, that's, again, outrageous. They would never accept that on the other side. They would never accept that premise. Or they blew up a coffee shop because there was an Israeli soldier that was sitting there. It's like, yeah, but you killed 50 other people. Hey, we needed to get that one guy. They would never accept it. They would never accept it. I agree with you. I just so happen to be one of those people that believes this is the law of the jungle. International law doesn't exist. And the sooner the country realizes it, they need to respond to it. Why am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, you're right in the sense that it's not being enforced. And, a law that is not being enforced, one could argue, is a dead letter. I've said this myself many times. But if we capitulate to the notion that international law doesn't matter, we lose the moral high ground. We become like them. No, I don't want to lose the moral high ground. I'm going to insist upon, compliance with international law, even though I have little reason to believe that these psychopaths will actually comply with it, because I want, at the end of the day, people to understand that those of us who stand on the side of the Palestinian people, we believe in the rule of law. We believe in equality before the law. We believe in the enforcement of the law without discrimination, and we therefore occupy the moral high ground. There's value in that. As soon as we stop lending any credence, any importance to international law, then we lose the moral high ground, in my opinion, or at least to some degree, we diminish the value of what we're saying. We're not putting ourselves on their level necessarily. I'm not saying that, but we do diminish our moral standing.
Okay. I understand the point. If a hypothetical, you're in the business, somebody else is in the business. The federal government says, all right, you can get 5 of these items, but you can't get more because there's environmental damage associated with you getting whatever particular item that is, whatever widget it is. But there's a craving for that widget. You are in competition with somebody across the street. They get 6 illegally. You get 5 legally. How long is your business going to stay in effect in comparison to the other business that is selling more and is outperforming you? And does your morality in this case matter in a physical matter reality sense?
Okay. You're talking about widgets. I'm talking about human lives. So
No.
I don't think that's a fair analogy, right? So
I'm trying to make the point.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I understand. You're putting yourself in I totally agree with you that when one party to a conflict says, I'm going to comply with the rules of war, and the other says, I don't give a damn about the rules of war, the ones who don't give a damn about the rules of war are going to have very significant advantages.
Yes.
That poses a real problem. I totally agree with you. And I am prepared to, as a commentator, as a lawyer, as just a human being, an activist, to make some accommodation for that to the resistance. Okay, I don't think the resistance should be held to the same standard as the oppressor.
Right.
No way. So I would give them more latitude, but I'm not prepared to go to the point of saying let's abandon all respect for the rules of the war on the side of the resistance. I still think we should make a good faith effort to comply with the rules of war, and and while understanding why resistance fighters sometimes depart from the rules of war and explaining that to our contemporaries, we should also urge them to make their best efforts to occupy the moral high ground, because at the end that will help them to win. They need public support, Jamal. They need public support, and they will lose public support if they descend to the depravity of their enemies.
Would Hamas ever get a good headline in the US or China or Russia?
Well, I've seen a lot of people. I mean, maybe not in the corporate media, people who have huge platforms, but I've seen a lot of people, commentators who do have significant influence, showing a lot more sympathy towards Hamas than they did before October 7th.
Yeah.
I've been absolutely blown away, frankly, by some of the commentary I've seen. I think people need to go further, and they need to say very, very unequivocally and bravely that all oppressed peoples have a right to armed resistance, and there's still not enough of that advocacy happening in the pro-Palestinian and the solidarity movement.
Yeah.
There's still not nearly enough. That's some of the things you and I know. I'm pretty sure you and I are on the same page about this. We do not tire of saying that the oppressed have a right to armed resistance, And there still needs to be more of that. But there has been, I think, quite a significant change in attitudes towards the resistance groups, not just Hamas, and to the whole notion of armed resistance.
I agree with you. I think that's true. I do think that's true. It's just, if I'm playing chess and a person has a knight that can move differently, they have an advantage. It's that part. And maybe the difference between two people who are at war is one person's values intellectually beyond the other person's values who just don't have those values. Like, that sounds bad. That sounds hypocritical on some level, and maybe it is. But there is an aggressor in things. There is a imperialist that is built into the process. And I agree with you, resistance to the imperialists, that's a different standard. I don't know. I guess I would need a physical matter reality example to see. I get your point. Morality has value. It's just, what is that value if you lose? But yeah, I guess this is a different conversation depending upon the conflict that you're in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. You point out, you said that you think there was an article that came out in the Washington Post, and they were pointing out that Israel was kind of losing this. This is Israel's unprecedented slaughter of journalists in Gaza. Okay, Washington Post now cares about it because we're talking about journalists, even though they didn't care about the other journalists. This is, even as Palestinian authorities denied targeting Palestinian journalists, Israeli authorities, some potential or some prominent lead Israeli journalists and commentators have cheered these killings. I think this was the article that you were talking about.
That's right.
Where they agreed with the killings, like, hey, good job murdering those journalists. And the Washington Post is like, ooh, that's impolite. That's impolite. What do you think keeps governments from getting involved? Let's say like China or Russia, because for all of the language that they put out, and I get it, I'm an American, and some people are going to scream at me, dude, it's your country that's doing it. I accept that. My country has gone rogue. And just like Germany went rogue, and you might have had some Germans who disagree with that process, that person had no capacity to do anything to corral that government from going rogue and on a murder spree. It took other countries to get involved to do it. What do you think is the restraint from Russia, China, India? Well, India actually agrees. They want to do that to Kashmir. But many of the countries of the world who have given voice of, we don't like this, we think this is inappropriate, this is obviously a genocide, but they don't do anything. They still sell to Israel. They still work with them. Turkey still sells gas. And this is after, what's his name? So that Netanyahu's Hitler, and yet work with them to take down Syria and still allows the processing of gas through their pipelines. What is the restraint from your point of view?
Well, first, let me say that, in my opinion, there is only one government in the world today that is not blameless, and that's the government of Yemen.
Yeah.
Everybody else bears some responsibility. The Yemenis have gone above and beyond the call of duty. I mean, I'm sure that one day, and hopefully within my lifetime, historians will look back at this as one of the greatest acts of human solidarity in the history of humanity, what they're doing. But beyond the government of Yemen, even the government of the Islamic Republic, they haven't done as much as they could. They have the capacity to inflict devastating damage on the genocidal military of Israel. And I understand there's a heavy price that they will pay for doing this, a very, very heavy price, but they haven't gone as far as Yemen. They haven't made the sacrifices that the Yemenis have made. And I would also say Hezbollah has gone above and beyond, but they're not the government. They're one voice in the government. So just let's put that aside. I think everybody else deserves to some degree criticism. And although I do agree with you, Jamal, that the most blameworthy government is the United States, there is plenty of blame to go around. And that includes China and Russia. So I think, and India. And, I don't think the answer to your question is the same for every government.
Yeah.
In the case of Russia, we've talked about this a lot in our program. First of all, Russia is locked in an existential war with the West. And that's something that I think should weigh heavily in any reasonable person's mind. How much can they really put at risk for the people of Palestine under such circumstances? Also, although I'm not a big fan of this explanation, a lot of Israeli citizens are Russian. Personally, if I were Putin, I would say, well, you want to live over there and support a genocidal entity? We're going to take away your citizenship. We do not consider you to be citizens anymore. So I'm not really persuaded by that one, but it is nonetheless a factor which apparently weighs on Vladimir Putin. And so those are considerations. With respect to China, I think that China, that's actually the one that I have the most difficulty understanding, to be completely honest about it, because I think China could cut off all trade with Israel. It is one of its biggest trading partners, either the first or second largest trading partner, and it wouldn't even be a pimple on the face of the Chinese economy, because the amount of trade that China is doing relative with Israel, relative to its whole international trade, is insignificant. But the amount of trade that Israel is doing with China from the perspective of Israel is very significant. So they could put a really significant spanking on the genocidal entity by imposing sanctions. I know they have this fidelity to this notion that there should be no sanctions without UN Security Council approval, but I do not agree with their argument as a matter of law, because the UN Charter is not the only instrument we have to consider here. They are also signatories to the Genocide Convention.
Right.
And they have an obligation under Article 1 of the Genocide Convention to prevent and punish genocide. And where the ICJ, which is the highest court under the United Nations Charter, the highest court has said that it is plausible that Israel is committing genocide, there's no question that all states' obligations to prevent genocide has been triggered just by virtue of that decision rendered in January of last year. And now things, of course, are much worse than they were in January of last year. So I think that China's legal argument is wrong. And I think they're smart enough to know that it's wrong. I don't know. I mean, that's the one country, at least they're not, as far as we know, arming Israel. They're not assisting, and they are taking the side of South Africa at the ICJ. And they've actually explicitly defended the right of the Palestinian people to armed resistance, which is not something that any Western government has done. So they're not even remotely close to the most complicit. But I have a lot of difficulty understanding the position of the Chinese government on this.
Yeah, somebody else has asked that question too. And I guess from my point of view, countries get involved when they're directly involved. Like, meaning it's not egalitarian. I think it was Caleb on yesterday, and Caleb was pointing out, was it Caleb? No. Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik was pointing out that this kind of socialist, what's what I'm looking for, idealist view of the world, that's not the way they operate. That they're operating under a realist vision of the world. And in a realist vision of the world, that's bad, that sucks. We're not affected by it. And when you think of it in those terms, it does make sense. Why would anybody get involved if they don't feel like they're directly involved? In their case, we don't want to spend the money. We don't want to take the political risks. We don't want to take the political hit. We don't want to do X. We don't want to do Y. It's unpredictable in regards to the consequences. And so from their point of view, international law be damned about the whole, we have a compulsion to act. We will sit here like everybody else and just watch. That's dark, but I think that's true. Or do you think I'm being too cynical when I'm evaluating this?
Well, if I understand your perspective on this, all I will say is, although I struggle every day not to shed tears about what is happening, and I'm choking on my rage, I truly believe that this genocidal entity is heading towards disaster. It's just, I think Israel's finished. It's utterly finished. And it will be the author of its own destruction, but the resistance groups and civil society in the West are going to make a big contribution to it at the end of the day. These people are, I mean, they've lost their shit. I mean, things have gotten so bad for Israel, and it has become so self-destructive that even Erwin Kotler, I don't know if you know that name, but in Canada, Erwin Kotler is a former justice minister who's, probably the most prominent Zionist. And, his wife was a legislative assistant for Menachem Begin, and he's oftentimes described as the most important unofficial advisor to the Israeli government and blah, blah, blah. He signed a letter with Uber Zionist Stephen Bronfman, a billionaire, who is the chief fundraiser for the governing Liberal Party in Canada, in which he was condemning the Netanyahu government for what it's doing. Now, the whole tenor of their letter, it was called the London Initiative, and apparently there were thousands of people, many of whom have a lengthy history of supporting Israel, who signed that letter. The whole tenor of it was not, what are you doing to the Palestinians? This is a moral outrage. It was, you're destroying Israel's standing in the world. Okay, so let's just be very clear about that. It's not like they suddenly developed a conscience for Palestinians. They didn't. What they did do is they panicked. They were all panicking, and they were right to be panicking. Israel's going down, and the real question is, how many people are they going to kill before they finally collapse? That's what's, the horrifying. And they could kill many more, Jamal. Let's have no illusions about that. Man, they could kill far more than they've already killed before they finally collapse. Especially because every day they're being told, effectively by Western governments, they have total impunity. There is no crime for which they will be punished. So their behavior just gets worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. They could kill another 1 million Palestinians. They could kill another 2 million Palestinians. And it is incumbent upon us, every citizen of conscience, to stop this now. But whatever happens, whatever we can do in terms of stopping it now, they will collapse. They're finished. It's over. Israel will never recover from this. And I don't think this is optimism, or I'm not being Pollyannish. I just think this is just a straight up, hard, cold assessment of the evidence.
One of my audience members, Barack, he is very pro-Zionist and pro-genocide. And he would say, yeah, I hear that, but we've expanded into Syria. We're taking the West Bank. We're eliminating the Gazans and their dangerous babies. We are expanding in the Lebanon. We're backed by a superpower. And with a wink and a nod, we're backed by all of the European powers. And nobody else has put sanctions on us in real terms. That doesn't look like failure. That looks like success.
Yeah, well, wars weren't won overnight. The Russians are still getting killed. They're still fighting. They're 3.5 years. But if you look at the whole trajectory of that war, a rational person would say they're winning. But every day they're taking significant casualties. And their advances, although they're accelerating, they're not particularly rapid, even at this stage, 3.5 years into this bloody conflict. So, wars are not won overnight. And I think your friend is looking at only one side of the equation. He's looking at what Israel has done to its enemies. But at what cost? He's not taking into account the cost. The cost is its reputation has been demolished. It will not recover. And its backers, by the way, you're right. The United States and Western governments, these sick bastards, don't seem at all inclined to hold Israel accountable. But they're going down too, Jamal. They're going down too. Their economies are in rapid decline. None of them is doing what is necessary in order to strengthen their societies. Trump's making things worse. Starmer's making things worse. Merz, Macron, the clown who is our prime minister in Canada, Mark Carney, agreeing to hike, military spending to 5% of GDP. We can't afford that, man. He's going to bankrupt the country. The social inequality, the marginalization, the violence in the streets, substance abuse, all of these problems are going unaddressed. The declining, the deteriorating infrastructure, the healthcare system's going in decline in the West. So the backers of Israel are going to collapse. For that reason alone, Israel's finished. Because without their support, it's not that they won't, want to give support to Israel. They just won't be able to. That's where we're heading.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, Israel is a pipsqueak of a country that can't exist the moment that the U.S. stops giving it money and support and weapons. It's that part. And if the U.S. goes down, and you make another really good point. When, what is his name? Peter Turchin, I believe. He has this book that goes into the elites, where he is making this argument that elites, when they take over a country, and it's too many, where they've been saturated, that they start to cannibalize the country. And so things like healthcare, education, all of these things effectively go dealt with in real terms with a public that's been immiserated, which creates and foments revolutions within the context of those governments. No, you make a really good point. From your mouth to God's ears, I think the issue, as you point out, they can murder a lot of people between now and then. And that is, I think, where the issue boils down to, which is a terrifying prospect, a very terrifying prospect.
I'll leave you with this. The Algerian people, before they achieved independence from France, they lost millions of people. Millions of people. The price of freedom is high. and it's highest in Palestine today.
Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. I always appreciate
Thank
these conversations. Dimitri
Thank
Lascaris, you have a good one. Lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. In 2020, Dimitri ran for the Green Party leadership in Canada, and he hosts Reason to Resist. Dimitri, you be safe on your trip, man. Thank you for this.
Thank you.